Ja, welkom bij Drop or Dram, de whisky podcast. In dit deel 2 duiken we opnieuw in de wereld van Loch Lomond. Na ons eerdere gesprek met brand ambassador Arjan Hartkamp praten we vandaag natuurlijk met niemand minder dan Michael Henry, master distiller van Loch Lomond. Dus verwacht diepgaande inzichten, verrassende verhalen en natuurlijk een dosis van het whiskypassie. Ik wens je alvast veel luisterplezier. By the way, dit interview is volledig in het Engels.
Dit is Drop or Dram, de podcast voor whiskyliefhebbers. Van beginner tot kenner. Schenk je favoriete glas in en geniet met ons mee.
Ja, wat een eer dat ik met Michael Henry om de tafel mag gaan zitten. Eigenlijk een legende in de whiskywereld die niet zo bekende naam heeft onder het grote publiek. Maar een stille kracht is achter Loch Lomond Distillery. Niet alleen deze whisky van hun, de Loch Lomonds, maar ook een deel van de Glen Scotia. Het is de master distiller. Hij bepaalt gewoon wat wij in de fles in ons glas hebben. Dat is bijna ongelooflijk. Er werkt natuurlijk een gigantisch groot team mee. Maar deze man bepaalt van A tot en met Z gewoon hoe de whisky ruikt, proeft en zoals wij kunnen genieten. En dat is wel heel bijzonder. Dus ik kan me verheugen op een fantastisch gesprek met Michael Henry. Ja, hij is helemaal in het Engels. We konden hem wel kort samenvatten, maar we hebben ervoor gekozen om dat toch niet te doen. Dus ik zou zeggen, geniet van het komende interview van ruim 45 minuten. Dus ik zou zeggen, schenk nog even wat lekkers in en luister gezellig met ons mee. Dit is Drop or Dram. So sitting down with Michael Henry, one of the icons of whiskey, maybe a lot of the people, like I said, introduced you as an icon, not so well known in the whiskey world. Well, in the whiskey world you are, but not so with the general public, because you're the man behind Loch Lomond. And welcome to our Drop or Dram, the whiskey podcast. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and even on a later stage, taste some of the wonderful whiskies of the Loch Lomond you have. So, what do I have to say? Welcome.
Oh, thank you. So, thanks for having me here, Dennis. It's my first time in the Netherlands with whiskey, so it's been a busy day, busy day yesterday, and I think we've got looking forward to the tastings this evening.
Yeah, like I said, most of the times you're at the distillery behind the desk, because a little bit of your background, you grew up next to a distillery, so whiskey was in your blood anyway.
So I grew up in a small town on the north coast of Ireland called Portstewart. Portstewart was near two distilleries at the time I was born. Bushmills that everyone knows about and still kind of going today, and but the other was kind of lesser known, Coleraine Distillery, which is the last of the old Irish distilleries to close. So both distilleries were kind of triple distilled single malt, which was kind of unusual in Ireland when the rest of Ireland's very much pot still based. But what they did have was that the people around were very kind of Bushmills was their whiskey, and my dad and my grandfather both drunk Bushmills, so I have lots of kind of memories of growing up as a child and seeing them with a bottle of Bushmills between them, and it's very much associated with happy times for me.
And you were like that. You were destined to end up in the whiskey industry yourself.
Yeah, so that kind of got my interest started, and when it came to studying for university, I was looking through university courses, and I found the brewing and distilling degree at Heriot Watt. So I approached the Bushmills Distillery, and they offered to sponsor me while I was studying. So I worked for them Christmas, Easter, and summer while I was at Heriot Watt. And then when I graduated, I went into, I graduated kind of towards the late 1990s, which wasn't a great time for distilling. So I went into brewing and worked in beer for 10 years before coming to Loch Lomond.
And coming to Loch Lomond, which has been a awarded whiskey distillery, especially grown in the last 10, 12, 15 years from just a few expressions to a vast range of this completely different whiskies. And we'll come back to that as Loch Lomond for the distillery. But brewing and distilling, so you were destined to get into Loch Lomond, but not straight away as master distiller, I guess.
No, it's when I worked in beer, I worked for Bass, the Bass Brewery in Belfast as a brewing team leader, and then as a filtration team leader at the Tennant's Brewery in Glasgow. So I was very much involved in the actual beer making process, and that gave me a real insight into the importance of yeast and how you look after your yeast, and how important it is to treat your yeast well to get the best flavour you can in beer. And then in 2007, I joined Loch Lomond as the kind of warehouse and blends manager, and very much in an operational role. But not long after I started, I took over the blending responsibilities. And at that time, so in 2007, the Loch Lomond distillery didn't really focus on single malts. Malts did a very, very small amount of single malt. It was really focused on blends and the High Commissioner blend and supplying bulk blend for other third parties. So I took on that blending responsibility, and then with a change of ownership in 2014, there's a shift in focus away from blended whiskey onto single malt, and that's really when the Loch Lomond single malt story started, and really the same for Glen Scotia as well. 2014 was when we really started to take our single malts seriously and invest time and resource into not the spirit, but bringing the spirit to people.
And it is a really interesting, unique distillery. And I know everybody says we have a unique distillery and a unique product, but Loch Lomond is different. It's a huge distillery, but what makes it so unique, I guess, is you have different types of stills. You are able to make 10, 11 different types of spirit in the first place. So that makes it unique. There's no other distillery, I guess, in especially in Scotland, that makes so many different types of whiskey in one distillery under one roof. So how do you manage that? How do you get a core expression of Loch Lomond? But first of all the interesting stuff. Well, 11 spirits, many flavor compounds.
You say start at the beginning with the different flavor types, but the beginning is really that single core expression. People need to be able to identify with the distillery and know what to expect when they're tasting the whiskies from that distillery. So it's really important for us to have a signature style. And for Loch Lomond, that signature style is fruity, sweet, and soft smoke. But it's how we achieve that signature style is very different to other distillers. We really focus on distillation to create flavour, and that's what drives us to have the different stills, the different peat levels, the different yeasts. because by pulling all those different levers in terms of creating flavor, that's what gives us the different spirit styles. So we create a big kind of pool of flavors, and then we draw on those different flavor styles and combine them together to give that signature character, that fruity, sweet, soft smoke. And like you're saying, we don't use wood to vary that character. So when we look at different Loch Lomond expressions, at the core is the fruity, sweet, soft smoke, but each expression will differ slightly around that kind of central character, and we achieve that by using different elements of the spirit styles.
Which is fairly unique, because most of the distilleries, and especially our listeners, they know single malt. And there's still a lot of, not so much knowledge about what is a single malt. Single malt will only say a single product from a single distillery. But within the distillery, you can vary very much. But most of the times when they vary, they do it by different type of wood or maturation on the wood style. But you do it a completely different way. You do it in the beginning already. You have so many different flavor styles and spirits to play around with before it goes into the cask.
Yeah, because we kind of do it the opposite way to a lot of other distilleries, where they'll have one spirit style and then they'll introduce variation by using different styles of cask. We're the opposite of that. We keep the cask the same, but we introduce variation in how we make the spirit. So we'll use different peat levels in the malted barley. We use different shapes of stills. We use different cut points, different yeasts. So we really look to maximize the flavor that we get in our new make spirits. But then when it comes to like the core expressions, other distilleries will have like a wood makeup. So they'll have one spirit style, and they'll maybe have 30% Oloroso sherry, 20% Pedro Jimenez sherry, and 50% bourbon as their wood makeup. Whereas we'll have, everything will be American oak, but we'll have, say like 20% straight neck still, unpeated, 20% straight neck still, peated, and 60% swan neck still.
Yeah,
So
you'll have some remarkable stills.
Yeah, so we flip. So where other distilleries will have a wood recipe, we flip that around and we have a spirit recipe, and we keep the wood the same.
That's very interesting. As I said, you have some remarkable stills. You talked about straight neck stills, swan. What's the difference? You have I only know the great pot stills. So there's a huge difference in there. And you also make a grain whiskey on site.
Yep. So we make grain and malt whiskey on site. So single grain and single malt. And we do that in a range of different still shapes. So we've 4 different types of stills on site. 3 are used with malted barley and 1 is used with wheat. So the one used with wheat is the stainless steel grain columns for continuous distillation. And that uses wheat as its like source for alcohol. Probably, and that grain is used in blending, so that's our blending grain. It's used in like high commissioner blend.
Nothing to do with the Loch Lomond we are talking about now, the single malts.
When we then look at what we do with malted barley, we use 3 shapes of stills with malted barley. We use a small column still made entirely out of copper, and we put malted barley through that, and we call that our single grain. So anything that's bottled as a single grain under the Loch Lomond brand comes from malted barley, which gives it a much richer flavour. And then when it comes to single malt, we use 2 shapes of stills for our single malts. We have the swan neck stills that you see in every other Scotch distillery, and those give us like a fruity floral character. And then you have the straight neck pot stills where you have the kind of kettle shaped base, but with a tall, narrow, straight neck on the still. And those straight neck stills are great at capturing orchard fruit characters into the new make spirit. So all of our single malts have a really fruity character, and it's down to how we use our straight neck pot stills.
That's super interesting. So, but talking about Loch Lomond whiskies, we're sitting down here in the vault with the Dutch importer from the Monarch, and we have a vast range to taste tonight. But the last 10 years, you're well accoladed with all those big medals and stuff. And only one trophy you didn't get. That was the golf trophy. So you decided to sponsor the Open. Yeah. So at least you can have the trophy from the Open in the office. I guess that's the case. But you probably won San Francisco and London. You won so many gold medals for a range of Loch Lomond. But how do you get the inspiration? Because you said you can make so many different types of spirits and new make spirits that has to be going. How do you get your inspiration to, you think, where you're going? You told us about the core expressions.
Talked about the San Francisco, and our Loch Lomond 12-year-old Perfectly Balanced has won, I think, platinum once or twice. So it's been a big success for us at San Francisco. And the Perfectly Balanced 12-year-old it's my, people ask me, they say to me, you can't have a favourite whiskey because it's like picking a favourite child. And I do have a favourite Loch Lomond, and it's the Loch Lomond 12-year-old Perfectly Balanced. And for me, it's the best representation of our distillery that you can have. When I taste that 12-year-old, it takes me right back to the distillery. It's like a walk through the distillery for me. It's it's the kind of best example of our fruity, sweet, soft smoke style. And when you break that down into those three elements, you ask what makes Loch Lomond unique, and it's our straight neck stills, and how we use those to create fruit flavour. So we take a very slow runoff, we get a very clear wort. We use specific types of distilling yeast, a longer fermentation time. So we create a really rich wash in fruit flavours, and then those straight neck stills are great at capturing those fruit flavours and bringing them to the new make spirit. When we talk about sweetness, you're one of the few distilleries that has their own cooperage on site.
Very important.
And having our own cooperage allows us to carefully manage the influence that our casks have over our spirit. We mature nearly exclusively in ex-bourbon barrels, so nearly all of our first maturation is in American oak, and that gives our whiskies a lovely honey background sweetness character, so that whatever Loch Lomond whiskey you're tasting, the spirit character will be the center, it will shine through, and it'll be supported by a background sweetness from the oak. And then the third and final element of that signature style is our soft smoke. Again, that comes directly from our straight neck pot stills. The straight neck pot stills are more selective in the flavours that they allow to pass through the still than a swan neck still. So when we distill peat in the straight neck stills, they hold back more of the bigger aggressive phenols, like the medicinal flavours, and they only allow through the kind of smoky, spicy peat character, So that gives us a softer peat influence. And that's really how our signature style comes together. And
Is that the case? Because you were talking about your more or less favorite Loch Lomond. What is Loch Lomond to you?
Yeah.
Is the Loch Lomond 12-year-old? But we have the triple 12 as we talked to.
Yeah.
All 12 years old, all Loch Lomond's. Slightly different with Inchmurren and Inchmorn, but slightly different in the 12 years old. Just what you were talking about.
That signature style of the fruity sweet soft smoke, that's found in Loch Lomond Original, Loch Lomond 12-year-old, 18 and 25. So that kind of runs through our core range. But when we look at the 12-year-olds, we start to push out different elements of that signature style. So for the 12-year-old Inchmurren, we're pushing out the fruit character. So if you like Loch Lomond and you like something fruitier, then we have the Inchmurren expression. And we get that by using spirit that's exclusively unpeated. And it's all from our straight neck pot stills, taken off the stills at a high collection strength. So the straight neck stills, we're able to run them in two different ways. The first way is we take a very narrow spirit cut from 90 to 80%, and that gives us a very high strength new make spirit. And that's great for capturing orchard fruits like apple, peach, pear flavors. It gives us slightly like orange type citrus character. And the second way of running the still is with a wide spirit cut. And that's where we take spirit from 90 to 55%, giving us a new make strength of 65. We get more apple, pear, lemon flavors with the wider cut. But for the Inchmurren expression, we're really using our fruitiest spirit style. So we use the straight neck still, high strength cut, really to give lots of estery fruit character. For the Inchmurren, we're then going to the other side and we're pushing out the smoke element. And for that, we're using all heavily peated malted barley, but heavily peated malt that's distilled 3 different ways. So the straight neck still with the high strength cut, the straight neck still with the low strength cut, and our swan neck still.
So the slight variation on the 12-year-old with the 3 characters you find in the core range,
Yep.
but every single expression has just that slight edge to one of the 3 major components.
Yeah.
So
the likes of the Inchmurren, the Inchmurren 12, it'll still be fruity and sweet, but we've really pushed out the smoke on it. The likes of the Inchmurren 12, we've kind of really cut back in the smoke, but we've really pushed out the fruit and the sweet character. So just with most of our expressions, we'll have the fruity sweet smoke and balance, but to introduce some variation, we play with the individual characters sometimes.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And like you said, you're one of the few distilleries that have their own cooperage. Although you always said we use the same different types of wood. We play around with the spirits we make in the remarkable stills you have. But also cooperage, the wood is so important as well. Maybe a little bit overrated sometimes, but it also gives you so much control and innovation, because I know from the Loch Lomond group, you also make a grain whiskey, which I really, really like, and we featured in one of our earlier podcasts, this the Spearhead, which is very, very important, heavily on the cooperage, because they do innovative stuff with the wood itself. But still, with the flavor compounds, like a flavor factory, like a Charlie's Chocolate Factory kind of style, the wood is still very important for you. So what is the advantage of having a cooperage on site?
So the advantage for us is that we control the impact the wood has on our spirit, the cooperage means that we're responsible for managing the quality of our casks and controlling the influence they have on the wood. And having our own cooperage allows us to keep so we use nearly all American oak. So with our cooperage, we're able to bring in new bourbons fresh from the States, and we buy from Jim Beam and Heaven Hill mainly. We're able to use those bourbons 2 to 3 times. And the first fill bourbon, with the bourbon fill, you're looking for kind of vanilla and honey flavor. Once we've used them 2 to 3 times, we'll take them into the cooperage and we'll re-char them. So we'll take the end off the barrel, we'll scrape the inside out to remove the old char, back to fresh oak, and then we'll burn that again, and that recharges the flavour within the wood. But this time, rather than vanilla and honey, we're getting more toffee and coconut flavours, and we'll use that re-char 3 times again. We'll then take it into our cooperage, repeat the re-char process, and use it for a final set of 3 fillings. So having our own cooperage allows us to use a barrel 9 times, but each fill we're checking the quality of the wood and the flavour that's giving us. So we're able to carefully manage how much flavour those barrels are imparting into our spirit.
That amazes me so much, because it's more than just a barrel. There's so much. So how is a typical day of a master distiller? As you say, the cooperage is very important. The spirit. There is a huge team you work with. It's not only you, of course. In the distillery, there's it's like Formula One team there. Everybody knows the driver, but there's so many people like the coopers. The people that do the operation, the distillman, the warehouse managers, everybody else. But how's a typical day as a master distiller? So people can have a huge romantic side. So you come in, after your coffee, straight away into the whiskey.
No, so it's very much when I come in the mornings, the first thing that I look at is spirit supply to our bottling plant. So that's we're vatting spirit and taking out of the casks and preparing it to send to our bottling plant. So that's mostly, most mornings I'll start at that. I'll speak to our vatting team and our warehousing team and check that all the vattings are going to plan. And then I'll see what vattings are ready to be tasted. Because every vatting that we do, I check I nose and taste it before I release it to the bottling hall. So that's the mornings is about really checking on the progress of what vattings are happening, and then planning the vattings for the next week or 2. Once that's done, I then start to look at what cask do we need to go for any kind of longer term spirit preparation, so like cask finishing. Do we have anything that's needing to come out of cask finishing this month, or do we have anything that's due to bottle next year that's looking to go into finishing wood? So the mornings is really about planning blending and vatting activity. The afternoons is more when I get to sit down and work with the actual whiskies, and the afternoons are more about working on new products and checking where spirit trials are going, assessing the flavour of trials that we're doing, because we work with different yeasts. We've been working with wine yeast for over 20 years now, so we're starting to get more wine yeast stocks available. So we're looking at how we can bring more wine yeast into our expressions. Really, wine yeast are great. The strain of wine yeast that we have is a higher ester producing strain, so basically makes more fruit character. So we look at how we're bringing that into our core range. We do annual editions for the golf, the open partnership. We have 3 annual editions every year. So my afternoons are spent kind of developing these on a 12-month kind of cycle. And then we have like market exclusives where we have likes of China, Australia may have up to 3 or 4 different market exclusives for that individual market that year. So the afternoons is all about the kind of new expressions and new flavors in the actual spirit itself.
And talking about new expressions, whiskey making is looking ahead for the future. So new expressions coming out, and maybe we can talk about a little bit about all the expressions there are available at the moment. But it's also a huge legacy, because there is a legacy, because Little Mill, the oldest, closest distillery, a close distillery, that's also a legacy to you. There's a link in the Loch Lomond Grove to the Little Mill distillery, which we've seen with some beautiful old whiskies from a close distillery, but also closed, but a new product. And even your Loch Lomond 50-year-old is a relatively new expression, which is 50-year-old, but that's also new expressions, isn't it? It's not about what's coming out in 10 or 12 years' time.
Yes, and you talked about the legacy of Little Mill. Little Mill was the first licensed distillery in Scotland, and throughout its time it was very forward-looking. So the first had one of the first female managers. Was the first to adopt like Salvin box maltings and move away from floor maltings. So throughout its time, Little Mill was very forward-looking. In the 1950s, in the 1960s, Little Mill actually built Loch Lomond. So it's a direct link between Little Mill and Loch Lomond. And importantly for Loch Lomond, they put in the same type of stills that were used at Little Mill. So the straight neck stills that we have today at Loch Lomond, they were first used at Little Mill. They were designed by the owner of Little Mill, Duncan Thomas, in the 1950s. So we're the only 2 distilleries that have used that shape of still. But also when Duncan Thomas built Loch Lomond, he put in the straight neck pot stills, but he also gave Loch Lomond the same approach to flavour, or like a philosophy about flavour. And that was to use distillation for creating flavour. And that's something that's very much part of Loch Lomond today. And so we're really a continuation of that kind of legacy from Little Mill. So it's great to have the Little Mill stocks that we do, because although Loch Lomond was built by Little Mill in 1984, the distilleries both closed down and they're sold to different parties. So they were separated. That separation lasted 10 years, until 1994, when the new owner of Little Mill, the new owner of Loch Lomond, Sandy Bullock, bought Little Mill in Glen Scotia, and he returned Loch Lomond and Little Mill to the same ownership. So it's been a sometimes fractured relationship, but we're back together now, and it's nice to see the history associated with Little Mill and how that shaped the development of the straight neck pot stills, and how those straight neck pot stills are still alive with Loch Lomond now.
Heritage and innovation go hand in hand. So
because people think tradition means doing the same thing again and again, but for us, the tradition is the thinking that Little Mill had. Little Mill were always forward thinking, looking very much to the future. They're very embracing of new processes, new techniques in distilling. So our tradition at Loch Lomond is that we have that same philosophy as Little Mill, so that we're forward thinking and forward looking.
And what is your well, not your favorite Loch Lomond, but what is the one you're most proud of from your hand? One of the Loch Lomond expressions that really is from your mind, your expertise.
So we touched on it earlier, and it is the Loch Lomond 12-year-old perfectly balanced. For me, that's the kind of closest expression to my heart from all Loch Lomond, because it represents so much about the distillery. So it's great when people taste it and they do say it's balanced, and they do say they get that touch of smoke at the end, and so it's nice to see that it's had the recognition it's had from the likes of the San Francisco competition. But for me, it's the reception it gets at tastings every time we bring it out. People say that it's kind of just really balanced, really enjoyable whiskey that they can sit and drink with friends, and that's really what whiskey's about for me.
And that's what Loch Lomond is about. It's very approachable, drinkable whiskeys. It's not maybe the 50-year-old is the exception for the collector's market as well. But mainly all the whiskeys you put out there on all the expressions, very approachable, very drinkable, very affordable. And if you look at the range, because it's there's so many expressions out there. And from innovation to like the 12-year-old, very quickly, what is the range at the moment? We're talking 2025?
No, it's hard to put an exact number on it because
the core range is the 12, the triple 12 we have, of course.
We have the Loch Lomond original.
Yeah.
So non-age statement, the 12-year-old perfectly balanced, and the Inchmoan and Inchmoran 12s.
Part of the triple 12s, yeah.
The Loch Lomond 18-year-old, the 25-year-old, that's the core range.
And then so many different other expressions in different markets, like you said as well.
And then because we have the single grains that we've now to use the grain storm, the unpeated and the peated single grains. We have the golf expressions
for the open, especially made for the open. Is it completely different?
So they're changed.
Golfers are a different type of people, sports.
But it's really what surprising about golf is how widespread it is and how many people play golf. It's
not an elite sport anymore.
No, it's one of the biggest participation sports worldwide, and it is fully worldwide. It's like big in America, Asia, Australia, Europe. So it's a great shop window for us. It's a great association to have it. While it is such a kind of worldwide sport, it started in Scotland, so it's a Scot-Czech sport, the same as whiskey. So it's a good association for us to have, and it allows us to bring our whiskies to more people.
Oh yeah, definitely. One of the ones I really wanted to talk about the fire and steam.
Yeah,
I found that so interesting. What was your thought about that? Because that is something that is, even in the name, it triggers you.
It was really about, throughout our core range, we've focused on trying to bring as much flavor as we can from how we distill. But I wanted to have an expression that showed the importance of our cooperage. So the fire part of steam and fire, the steam part of steam and fire is about the steam and how we use steam to drive our stills and drive flavour through our stills, and how we use the different shapes of stills to create different flavours. So that's the steam part. The second part is the fire, and that's about having our own cooperage and how we use fire to bring out flavour from the wood.
Nothing to do with peat or
No,
bonfire.
It's about using, so for steam and fire, it's a non-age whiskey, and we're using 8 to 10-year-old spirit. And that spirit is being matured in refill American oak. And we've added the different spirit styles together, and we fill off into heavily charred American oak from our barrels from our own cooperage. And those barrels have had about a 4-minute burn. So normally our medium char barrels that we use for original maturation have a 2-minute burn. That gives that lovely kind of toffee coconut flavors. For the heavy char barrels, we get much more deeper char. So it doesn't give a smoky flavor at all. It's all about breaking down the oak, releasing sugars from the oak, and then caramelizing them as they're released. And the heavy char gives us a roasted marshmallow type flavor. It kind of caramelizes the sugars and brings out lots of vanillas from the wood. So when we do the finish in the heavy char American oak, it's about an 8-month finish. That just adds a lovely melted brown sugar sweetness to the spirit. And with all those sugars, it gives a lovely silky mouthfeel. So that was the thinking behind Steam and Fire was to kind of recognize our remarkable stills, but also to bring our cooperage into the light.
And I find it a very, very nice expression. Easy to drink, but it's also, like you said, like I asked you before, where did you get your expression? But it brings so many childhood memories, and I guess that's what your inspiration comes from as well. Growing up next to a distillery, working at a distillery, there are so many things in your working life, in your personal life, that influence eventually the end product we all get to taste. So we get a slight insight in your personal life.
That's like I said, growing up and seeing my dad and my grandfather drinking whiskey, it brings back it's all positive memories for me, and getting that kind of happy times with them. Whiskey was like part of that. It kind of sparked those occasions, and that's what I want our whiskies to do for people, to spark occasions when they can share happy times with family and friends. And so that's in my head whenever I approach any Loch Lomond expression, that this whiskey should be fun, exciting, people should want to drink it, but they should also feel happy drinking it. And it should be
and create fond memories.
Yeah, should spark those memories. So the liquid has to be kind of approachable, affordable, so that people can get their hands on it. But then it has to be kind of exciting and flavorful to kind of generate those, or to excite those memories.
And I think that is a wonderful way to conclude this conversation. And we'll have a taste of the core expression, the 1212, later in the bar where we're sitting. And I think to the people at home, just grab a few bottles, just create memories, because that's the best thing you can do with your family and friends. Create fond memories and enjoy whiskey. So Michael, as an icon of whiskey, maybe not a lot of people have seen you, but you're so important to the industry. Thank you so much for talking to us and explaining a little bit more about what is Loch Lomond about, where it comes from, and how much it takes to make people happy, because it's not an easy job. And but I think you're doing very, very well. So keep on doing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Dit was Drop or Dram. Vergeet niet om je te abonneren op onze podcast of kijk op onze website www.dropordram.nl. Tot de volgende keer.